Good morning, everybody. This is episode 5 of our webinar series. Let me just take care of some housekeeping here to start this thing off here. Start our recording. Just so everybody knows, when we are projecting, when we're doing these, if you have questions or anything when you're in Skype, there's a box here on the lower left. If you want to ask questions, you can type them in, and we will stop periodically, and Lori will be the one who will ask Lori, and she can read them to the group as we progress. Hope everybody can see. Yeah, so we are on episode 5 of our 6-part webinar series, Portfolio Project Management and Portfolio Project Management Excellence Series. Today we're going to talk about PPM and Resource Management. In terms of as we went through our episode series here, it's been 6 episodes. We're going to finish up with reporting and dashboards. I think if you've stayed for all of these, you'll see that the wheelhouse that captures all the functionality and allows us to understand what's going on from PPM. It's really important to understand reporting. So today we're going to focus on PPM and resource management, how resources are allocated, best practices around resource management. We're going to spend some time today on what they call resource revolution, which is kind of interesting about how resources are being used in our economy today and how we can grow things. So this should be a good session today. I want to tell everybody we've got a new webinar series, 2 new webinar series actually that we rolled out yesterday. We're focusing on 2 industries. We've got a series that's focusing on healthcare and a series focusing on financial services. What these webinar series will have in common is that they're going to focus on on digital disruptions and industry trends that are impacting both of these industries, and how do you manage and benefit from them. So for example, in the healthcare space, you're seeing the whole focus on customer-centric experience, pushing data down to the consumer and the patient so they can make decisions, the importance of single source of truth data management, things like blockchain, for example, that are playing a role in healthcare. So we're going to talk about how to manage those types of activities. In financial services, it's similar type thing for disruption. I mean, you're seeing the focus on first of all, emerging threats and emerging competitors like fintechs and insurance tech companies that are moving into that area. New technologies around mobility and pushing consumer financial data down to the user, making it more accessible. Some of the challenges the financial services companies are having are around the ability to get a younger demographic in terms of their who's using them, and they're also facing threats from technologies like blockchain as well. So they're changing their engagement model. So we'll talk about all those things, and we're starting in June with these. So it'd be great if people want to sign up for this. Those sign up information is down at the bottom of the website. Let's just talk about us. We are Quantum PM. We're a Gold Microsoft partner. We specialize in implementing PPM type solutions, enterprise solutions that deliver a project management capability or program management capability to enterprises that allow them to manage their businesses and basically achieve alignment between business and strategy, so that the organizational is optimized to drive value creation and delivery of results to the overall organization. I mean, one of our fortes is really the whole technology integration across multiple platforms to provide enterprise solutions, things like trend analysis, things like enterprise reporting. We've got our BI Advantage product, which is a cloud integration hub, which is really pretty revolutionary, that allows us to have single integration hub that can span an enterprise. So we work with within the many industries: financial services, healthcare, retail, government, state and local government, to expand our ability to deliver value to organizations in terms of PPM capabilities across the enterprise. So let's talk about resource management. Best place to start is with PMI, Project Management Institute, the PMBOK, the book that they publish every so often, and the definition of it is: resource management is the efficient and effective development of an organization's resources when they are needed. Many different types of resources can be financial resources, inventory, human skills, production resources, or information. In terms of the best practices and approach, It's really focusing on resource allocation to optimize the value creation that's that's being delivered from the investment. I mean, in my experience here, it's focusing on, there's lots of different types of assets and scarce resources, scarcity of resources, and ensuring that, you're getting the best ROI and return on investment as a result of the deployment and usage of those scarce resources. A lot of technology can help you out with that, but it's really making sure that you understand, what these resources are and having a focus throughout the organization on, optimization and effectiveness of deployment. The other thing is one of the, from an organizational perspective, is focusing on continuous improvement, understanding where you've got deficiencies in your, in effect, managing your resource pool in such a way and your sourcing model so that it has the capability and scalability to support your business goals and business strategies. But yeah, so if you want to, information and books on these things, I mean, PMI is a great place to go, and I'm sure there's many, PMP certified project managers on the group. We get a lot of those on these webinars. Let's talk about the whole idea of a resource revolution, which is kind of interesting. There's a lot of theories out there about this whole idea of, how do we increase the productivity from our resources? And let's talk about it. If you think about it, in terms of global demand, there's a couple different things. You've got growth of population, you've got growth of global economies, and really the thing is, I mean, given the fact that there's another 2 billion people appearing in this world, in terms of, global demand requires a greater efficiency in terms of how we derive results from the deployment of our resources, ensuring that they're being optimized. So in terms of many ways, it's, the whole idea of technology, it gives us an opportunity to leverage and scale the overall benefit of how we use these things. For example, here's some. We talked about resources as different types. Cars spend 95% of their time sitting in the garages or parking lots. Okay, is that the most effective way to use a scarce resource? Freeways, also horrendously inefficient. You've got a situation where, 2,000 cars a lane per hour is what these roads are designed to support. Anything beyond that, and you wind up with, traffic and delays. And here's the thing, it's up on the top right here. We talk about, annual resource productivity report improvements which are required to meet global demand. As we said, we've got a growing economy, growing world. If you look at these numbers that are out there, water efficiency, increase in productivity improvements in terms of energy utilization, food 1.5%. I mean, there's significant challenges out there that require, that we gain greater efficiency in how we deploy our many type of resources. We talked about humans, we talked about machine, equipment, technology. I mean, there's all different categories of resources associated with these. In terms of the resource revolution, it's kind of interesting. This is really an interesting time we're living in here in terms of better ways of using our resources in terms of imagination and revolutionary business processes for scope. What we're going to find here is that there's, instead of scarcity, you're going to have a situation where there's, business opportunities in many ways to do it. And this is one that's kind of interesting here. Adam Smith, I don't know if anybody in high school remembers reading Wealth of Nations with Adam Smith, 3 primary business inputs, labor, capital, and land. In terms of what are the 3 primary inputs that we have, and in terms of the industrial revolutions that we've had in the past, we've had increases, limited liabilities and driving scale in terms of things like that impact labor. In terms of capital, we've had petroleum, electric grid, assembly line cars, skyscrapers, specific scientific measurement. That's enabling corporate globalization, which has impacted capital, but we haven't anything about land and natural resources. So, there is in fact a third lever here that hasn't really been explored as much as possible. And again, when we talk about resources, we have to think about multiple types of them. I mean, how you've got, we talked about machinery, equipment, people. They fall in all different types of, different categories of them. How do we increase productivity? Really, if you think about it, there's a couple different ways to do it. I mean, you've got the information technology, and we've had other episodes in this series. We talked about, disrupting technologies. I think those are all things that can allow us to increase the productivity of what we have from a resource perspective, where people now can, where machines in many ways can do things that people do, so people can be more effectively deployed to more creative type opportunities. Like when we talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning and things of that sort. I mean, And those are things that will allow people to focus on, let's understand our marketplace rather than actually doing the actual, blocking and tackling associated with it. So it allows people to do more thought leadership type work. Material sciences and biology, in terms of what we're doing from a productivity capability there as well. We think about some of the things that are done, like for fertilizer, for example, and ability to produce increased food. These are all opportunities that exist, that allow us to increase the overall productivity. Some of the materials that we're being designed, for example, like, composites for building aircraft, for example. Those are all things that will allow us to increase the effectiveness of our resource utilization. This is a big one, achieving a high economic growth in the developing world to support 2.5 billion new people. This is the biggest wealth creating opportunity of the century. We've got all these people who are going to be showing up, who will exist, and we need to be able to feed them, clothe them, put housing over their heads, provide services to them, educate them, provide water and infrastructure to support them, and provide transportation. These are all things that we need to have an ability to do so. So ability to be more productive in our resource utilization and focus on more value-added type activities is pretty important. This is the interesting part, is that in terms of a paradigm shift, this is a McKinsey study here that they talked about where, setting historic resource productivity improvements rates to 1% to 2% a year. Leaders must deliver productivity gains of 50% or more every few years. And I think that's an interesting comment there, because we've talked about in earlier sessions about the importance of innovation and thinking outside the box and agile development. I think in terms of change, and we talked about this as well, the whole concept of changing the fundamental mindset of delivery models and challenging the status quo. These are all things that leaders need to do in order to, get these kind of productivity gains out of organizations. You think about it like Amazon, for example, in terms of productivity gains, 50% or more every couple of years in terms of what they're doing for like food and what they're doing in terms of delivery services, cloud services. This is actually happening. So this gets back to the whole concept of an agile, innovative organization and having that type of mindset to take advantage of these, resource revolution opportunities that exist. Couple methods for increasing productivity. This is substitution. Basically, essentially what you want to do is replace, costly, clunky, and scarce materials with less scarce, cheaper, and higher performing ones. This is something every organization needs to do, is to think about, how things are delivered, challenge your delivery models, challenge your business models, and understand, is this the most effective way to do this? Are there cheaper and higher performing technologies and capabilities that are out there? This is a good example, like fintech we talked about earlier for financial services, where you get situations where you've got technology companies that are moving into the financial services marketplace instead of traditional financial services companies, because they're higher performing. They can do it cheaper, less scarce, and higher performing. So these are situations where the productivity that's being delivered to the consumer is a lot higher as a result of that migration of additional players into that particular traditional marketplace. Optimization. Invest software in resource-intensive industries to improve dramatically how companies use scarce resources. Okay, this can get back to the whole idea of automation, machine learning, things of that sort. If you're doing manufacturing, for example, there are ways that you can use robotics to in effect, have workers work on things that are actually more value-added. And really, this is more about redeploying your workforce in a way that they're doing things that require more human intervention, more ability for critical thinking than something which could be more standard and automated. Virtualization, that's the whole idea of moving things out of the world. It's like, the whole idea of a cloud computing, virtualized computing. Those are all situations where, you basically take things that you would spend a lot of time managing and try to push them out into some other place. And you see this a lot. I would even argue that could be things like managed services. A lot of companies like, let's talk about Microsoft. What do they do? The capabilities that they have internally are based on software development. Things that are not that, they outsource it. There's things that those would all be things that really focusing on your core competency and things that you're necessarily not, which are cost centers to you in effect. Focus your, just basically have someone else do that, in effect virtualize it, and then focus on really what you're good at. Circularity, finding value in products after their initial use. That's the whole reusability and recycling of capabilities and products that we have that can come in along and have subsequent lives beyond that. To really see what we can do from, making sure we're using things as effectively as possible. And then the whole focus on waste elimination. I mean, really looking at your processes, looking at your services, look at the delivery models that you've got, look at your operating models, understanding if there's ways that you can enhance it, bring in new partners, bring in new technologies, and really, organize and align your delivery model in such a way that, you can make it more effective. And this gets back to something we talked about in one of the earlier sessions about, again, innovation. I mean, a lot of companies that are very innovative, they focus on, new markets, new technologies, establishing new presence in the marketplace, but also, we talked about the importance of optimizing delivery of existing services and capabilities if they're profitable. I mean, you've got, the cash cow of a portfolio is equally important, and what you can do from an optimization perspective there to improve delivery, and that'll allow you to enhance the longevity of that particular service or product, and also give you the opportunity to leverage the cash that can be generated to support investment in other types of activities. Okay, so that's what we're talking about for resource revolution. So that's really, I'm trying to challenge the thinking there. Don't think about resources just people. Think about a lot of different things and how we effectively use those to use it as a lever for growing organizational growth and the challenges that we have in the world today that we need to address. This is a slide one that really reflects a lot of times what I see as a consultant. I've been consulting for 20 years, with a lot of strategy, IT strategy consulting, strategy design consulting, and the whole thing around resource management. I mean, what you see a lot of time, not understanding what a team is working on. I mean, a lot of times when we implement these solutions, you find out that, people will say, well, my team spends half their time on quote undefined tasks. And really addressing to understand what the team is working on is something that is really important to, move yourself into a, more of a managed type resource environment. Inadequate time tracking. Again, this gets back to the problem of not understanding what people are working on. Insight into consumption and usage. That can get back to, not having reports, not having time tracking, not having alignment with strategy, just people just doing stuff. And this can also be financial systems. You see situations where, like cost accounting, for example, or if you're trying to do a chargeback, where they don't understand the cost that's associated with a particular activity and how to move that forward. Organizational misalignment and fiefdoms. That's a big one as well. I mean, you see a lot of organizations which have vertical silos, that grew through acquisition, and it's really, frequent where, as a result of those individual fiefdoms, that there's not a lot of horizontal collaboration across the overall organization. The other place this really can help you is we talked about different type of we talked about different types of resources. If you're doing like strategic sourcing, if you're doing things like, outsourcing models where you've got scalable delivery models, this can hamper all of that. And this can really not just impact your cost structure and your ability to deliver new work, but also, this can also impact the effectiveness of the overall organization's ability to deliver. Lack of alignment between activity and strategy. This can be, again, the value add that's created of how resources are defined. It's important to have a structure in place that allows you to, understand the strategy and also ensure the organization is aligned to deliver against it. And not understanding skills. This is another one that I find a lot. Organizations frequently have situations where they don't know what their team knows. I mean, I've done plenty of like organizational skills assessments where we have to go back and, look at the team and say, okay, based on these skills, how would you rate yourself? And you find that, there could be holes in redundancy. There can either be redundancies or there can be holes in your, organizational skill matrix or skill capability model or organizational capability model that you really need to understand. I mean, that is really an essential input into coming up with a resource management model that allows you to either use contractors or outsource your vendors or even your own employees, but also it's important from a succession planning perspective to be able to replace people or understand, where you've got key skills and ensuring that you've got, sufficient depth and bench, shall we say, with those key skills so they don't just go walking out the door if somebody retires or something, having the ability to have backfill and have redundancy for specific skills is pretty important. Resource management in HR in terms of opportunities. that gets back to this point I was making before. A lot of times, we do resource management, but we don't understand, why we can't deliver what we're doing. What are the holes in our resource management profile? Do we understand the skills that we have? And let's get back to HR, where we need to hire people, we need to train people, we need to give people an opportunity to make sure we have, in effect, a catalog of required skills, and making sure we've got coverage in all those skills, be it either internal employees or third-party outsourcing models that can provide it. I mean, my suggestion has always been, when doing these organizational design workshops, is, for things that are entrepreneurial or business, represent enterprise knowledge or organizational knowledge, that should be in-house. But things that are more, more generic, more scalable, more they can be, more generic, that are not really reflect the value proposition of your organization. I mean, those can be third-party vendors and external entities as well. The whole flexible, scalable delivery model, a lot of times use vendors, so you're not paying for people if you've got a demand profile which is, not linear and it jumps around throughout the year. You can use a scalable model to support that. Capability model. You really need to understand the skills of what the staff are doing. And then the funding model and operating model alignment is really making sure you understand the costs that are associated with different resources. So when it comes time to track CapEx and OpEx and depreciate a particular investment for an asset, or understand the cost of something you're producing or selling, that's really important, so you can make pricing decisions in an appropriate way, or costing decisions or taxing decisions, so that you can drive the costing of your organization. Let's see here. This is just a quick slide here. We go over this real fast. I mean, this is really the whole idea of, PPM, the whole resource management step is really involved in all the different steps of PMI. This is right out of a PMI deck that really says it's really embedded within all the different steps of PMI management. This is an interesting question, because a lot of times organizations say, well, what about Agile? We see Agile delivery not just in the case of IT, but also for like new product development. A lot of organizations, we talked about when we did our Agile workshop, organizations are going to rapid product development, rapid digital development, rapid solutioning. I mean, it's all about Agile and cycles. And really, how do we do that from a resource management perspective? A lot of times what it is, just understanding and tracking, resources assigned to teams based upon starts and end dates of sprints. And a lot of the operating models that I build, that's really what we will try to do. In terms of the, managing of backlogs and managing of what flows into a particular sprint. I mean, that's not something that's supposed to be managed except by the Agile team and the Agile coach, and would be, contrary to the methodology if you tried to do that. So this is really the goal here is to manage the beginning and end date of a particular sprint. This is just a generic slide. It really kind of shows you, from a resource management perspective, it should be something that's managed throughout the entire life cycle. I mean, this is one where, a project flows into the portfolio. There's a business case associated with it. We do a portfolio analysis to determine whether we want to do it. Then we flow through the project management piece, where we actually do the delivery side of it. There could be Agile development where we have sprints that are being managed during the delivery side of this, reporting and dashboards. And the whole resource management piece should flow all the way from, conception of idea all the way through final delivery. And this is, capability model I use quite a bit, is that we've developed, a lot of times when companies stand up a PMO or PPM capability, it's really around, understanding the components and capabilities that the organization needs to have to support a resource management, a PMO function. I mean, and a lot of times, you tell companies, it's like, you can't just have the technology. You need to have the governance in place to support it, the processes, the organizational structure, the environment, which has like a PMO strategy, and there's a value proposition, and there's a management support associated with it. I mean, it's got to be an organizational focus on a PMO, just on a project management discipline. But one of the key core capabilities of a PMO is understanding your resource management. And, my view is it should, in terms of alignment with financial management and alignment with human resources, I think all of that is pretty much essential. This is just, let's skip that one here. Yeah, here's a good example of a resource management function in a PMO. This is a real example of a company that, I did some work for, where we had different lines of business that are associated with it. at different IT delivery levels and different change management levels, and within all these different pieces, core within the PMO was the ability to manage resources, and it was aligned with an HR and a financial management resource, so we could, make sure we've got a delivery model that can support the individual lines of business. In this case, we stood up a transformation management office, a TMO, which would be ancillary and kind of a spin-off from the PMO. The TMO would actually manage the transformation, but it would leverage core capabilities and core skills from the overall PMO. But really, the whole resource management function is something that is pretty critical to have within the PMO function, and also aligned with the delivery model and the financial management model. This is an IT service. Let's get this one out of here. Okay, let's go to the demo right now. Does anybody have any questions from the beginning of this? Lori, are there any questions?
No questions at this point, John. Okay. If you have questions, anyone, feel free to type them in, and I'll make sure John gets them. Okay,
so let's talk about overall resource management. In terms of the resource management function, a lot of times what we're doing, if we're within the Microsoft world, if we go ahead and create a particular project. In this particular case, I'm going to create a project that goes out here. Let's go new project. We'll call it. There's a waterfall-based project that comes with it, and we're going to assign resources, and we'll look at the resource management function as well. Some of the different impacts and how we can support it. So if I'm going to create a project for this, we'll call it webinar 5. I'll make myself the owner. I don't need to do that. Put the benefits. Let me call it 75,000. Total cost is 100,000. So I'm just emulating the job of a project manager. We're going to create the project that's associated with this. Apologize for the delay. Okay, so we've created this new project here. I'm in Project Online right now. This is the 5 project. If you look, everybody, like we've done before, we've got the project detail pages that are associated with it. We're in PWA. So, if I was a project manager and I created this particular project, I'm going to go ahead now and, assign projects to it. So I created IT Project Waterfall was the type. Let's actually change the view here. Webinar 5 project. So if I'm the PM, then I'm going to go ahead and assign my team to it. If I create the project within PWA, I could go here and click on build team. So if I'm in project, I would go ahead and in the project center, I would go ahead and select the overall project that I have, go to build team. So from a resource management perspective, my first activity would be determining what resources would be relevant to a particular project. In this case, I've got proposed projects and committed resources associated with it. This flowed directly from the project schedule that was constructed to be associated with a particular project type. So a lot of times what you would do if I'm a project manager, I would go ahead and say, okay, let's just pick the resources I want to assign and make available to this particular piece. So for purposes of what we're doing today, I'm going to put me in there, and I will put my friend Greg Peterson, who has a lot of stuff in here, and then we'll put some demo people in here. So these are ones that I've used at other, these are, demo users that we can use in a assign tool. We'll call them, let's call them QPM 11, 12, 13, and 14. We'll add them to the pool of available resources. Save it and close it. Okay. Then I'm going to go back to the schedule. And for resource management purposes, what I'm going to do today is we're going to assign some of these resources to some tasks. So I'm going to say, okay, let's conduct needs analysis, 40 hours worth of work. I'll hit the drop down. I'll assign me a couple of the QPM resources, which are the dummy resources that I've created in the past. Let's do some other assignments here. Let's go over here to develop functional specs, 40 hours worth of work. I'll put some of the other resources that I've got there. There's 120 hours, a good amount. Okay, so we've gone ahead and assigned, we've assigned resources to this particular project. I'm going to publish it. So it's processing it, saving it now. Okay, now I can close it. It's going to give me the check-in function, so it'll go back into the PWA repository. It's checking in. Okay, so now the resource assignments that have been done are included there. Within Project Online, as you were saying, this is Project Center. This is the highest level view of the overall project. These are the project types. These are the timeline up on the top here. So from a resource management perspective, there's a couple things to look at here. If I want to go, let's go over to resources. Now what we can do here is for purposes of analysis, what this does is this is the resource center, which is the mechanism by a resource management professional would get a chance to select the domain of resources that they're going to use it for performing analysis. A lot of times, instead of using individuals, you can use roles, for example. So if you want to look at a particular role and do the resource management analysis against them. And the other thing you can do is a lot of times if it's capabilities. So I mean, one of the things we see a lot is that they've got capability managers. So rather than assign, if I was the project manager, instead of assigning it to a particular person, I would assign it to a dummy resource like CC consultant, which would be a capability consultant, and then the person responsible for that particular skill and skill set would actually make the change in terms of assigning the particular resource and actually swap it out with the more appropriate person. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the other resources that we have for purposes of analysis. We're going to look at, me. I've been assigned to a bunch of different tasks associated with this. And I did QPM 11 through 15. So I'm going to add these into the group. So I've got the ones I just assigned, which are QPM 11 through 15, me, and we'll throw CC consultant in there so we can get an opportunity of looking at what a generic resource looks like, so we can make a determination of how the resource manager would allocate their work from the capability-based resource to actual specific individuals. So what we would do here, and then here's a couple of things we want to look at here, is in terms of the resources, you've had the opportunity here of looking at all the different types of resources. We talked about the importance at the beginning of this of, understanding the material resources and cost resources. Resourcing can have lots of different drivers and lots of different components to them. Whether there's a geographic or by role or by SME, there's different views you could have here. When you're configuring Project Online, you make a determination about the, what they call the resource center view. So if you want to have additional views and mechanisms for looking at this, you have that opportunity. So, so we picked our resources out. So let's look at the capacity planning and then resource requests. So the first one we'll look, I'm sorry, resource assignment. So what we'll do first is look at resource assignment, and I'm assuming I'm a resource manager. There could be a resource manager by, capability or function or whatever. But what this does is it lets you look at, what the resources are working on. You can get a Gantt view to it, or you can do a time phase view of it. But this will let you say, okay, for this particular resource, in this case, CC Consultant, who's our generic resource, these are the projects and tasks that this person is assigned to. And you'll see that there's a lot of stuff this person has been assigned to. So, I mean, that's as a result, because they are a generic resource, why are they, so that, that's why you would find, why this allocation would be there. So this will give you an idea of, what they're working on, what the tasks are, what the work is, how much work is remaining, what are the percentage of completions associated with it. If you look at, for example, me here, we just created one called Webinar 5 project. I added myself to one called Conduct Needs Analysis. Here's how much I've done. Here's my start and end date. So you can see, for myself, for example, these are the tasks and activities that I'm working on. And this is useful for all the different pieces. So if you've got a team here of a particular capability or skill, you have the opportunity here to go say, okay, let's take a look at the the domain and of what they're actually working on, and get visibility into doing that. Some of the other options you've got here is you've got the summary views of these. You can do by role. You can filter. You can do a custom filter if you want to filter it down. So you can look at it, for example, by person. If you don't want to have this level of detail, you can just look at the project view and then change it up. And for example, the outline capability we talked about earlier. If I use Outlook over here, if I just want to look at the individual people, I can say, okay, let's look at specific resources. So this is an effective way of reducing the strain on your eyes, so to speak. So if I just want to look at one particular person, I go, okay, let's just see what this person's doing. Here's their projects. Let's look at their projects. It lets you do a top-down view of what these individuals are from an outline perspective. Okay, so that pretty much captures the resource center side of this. If we go to capacity planning, this is where it really gets interesting from a resource perspective. And the thing that's interesting is the key things to look at from a resource perspective is you've got the views over here on the left. And these are out-of-the-box views that are available for, how to look at the selected resources that we have. And then, let's just start. We can walk through these, but let's start with the one we're on right now. The time scale, whether we're talking hours, what the time scale is for months. In terms of over-allocation and under-allocation, we can do plus or minus 10%. We can do ranges from a dating perspective, and we can also export to Excel. So let's look at this slide here. I mean, what this is telling me from a GUI perspective, I've got a month-by-month time scale. So I've got May, June, July, August, September. These are the resources that I'm selecting and looking on. And the thing you'll see is probably what you'd expect. I mean, what this says is for remaining availability, I'm using a generic resource here like CC Consultant, who basically all this activity is being assigned to this person. They're wildly over-allocated. And then you've got the rest of these resources here, which have basis for looking at remaining availability, actually have remaining availability. So what the resource manager would do here is they would look at the work that the CC consultant, if they wanted to allocate work and change it from a generic resource to a specific person, and make a determination, and in fact, go back and look at the tasks and activities that are associated with that, with CC consultant, and reassign those tasks to the other resources that have additional availability left. And you'll see here that this profile can change as we go. So the remaining availability, for example, in June, they have different ones that go, and this is all based upon the assignments that we did earlier. So this gives you a good idea of who's got time that's available here and who's being underutilized. In some cases, like for example, some of these folks, you got like 168 hours. That's a lot of time. This person, is essentially, assigned to nothing. So this gives you the insights that you would need to understand where you've got capacity that can be allocated. If you scroll down, this gives you more of a table-centric view. So you can look at this from here's the resource, here's the availability, here's the capacity, on a month-by-month basis. Here's their availability, here's their capacity, and then the projects they're assigned to. So this can give you more breakdowns if you say to yourself, well, gee, in this case, I've got all this additional capacity here. John's got all this. I've got 104 hours of additional capacity. let's just scroll down and see what John is working on. Here's what their availability is. Here's their capacity. And then these are the projects they're assigned to. If we look at some of the other views here, we've got the resource utilization. Okay, the resource utilization view. What this tells me is that for the selected resources, what is the potential hours that this group of people could be working? So what this says is I've got, in the case, for example, June here, I've got 1,512 hours that I can allocate with the group of people that I'm looking at here, and is my entire group being utilized? And what this shows me is, by the way, I've got this huge stack of hours here that are available that these people could work that aren't being worked. So I've got a significant problem here from a utilization perspective. So then I would go back and say, okay, what's this? This is again part of the puzzle. It's like you have to figure it out and just say, okay, based on who's doing what here, who's contributing to the problem. And what this would tell me is, since I've got a month of June, I would know about 168 hours of available work, right? It's 4 weeks times 40. It's about 160. It comes out to 160, 168. So I would know that to begin with, and I would say, okay, this guy, CC consultant, is wildly overallocated, but these other ones, I've got availability. So this can be useful for, how to make a determination as to where I want to go ahead and reallocate additional, some of the work and labor to other folks within the group. And then you go down here and it shows you, based on, again, who's got availability, what their capacity is, and then what their availability is. So for example, in the month of June, my capacity is 168 hours on that particular month because of the days of the week and, what the holidays fall on. This is the availability that I have. Here's what I'm being assigned. So this will really gives you the insights that lets you know, what people are doing from a capability perspective. The next view we want to look at is, if we want to look at it by resource utilization by project. I mean, what this can show you here is really, based on the total available hours that I have, where are they spending their time? Okay, so what this says is that for this stack in the month of June, I have 1,512 hours of capacity. 504 hours of that are associated with CWL. 80 hours are associated with the SAP Basis Console project. And you can see, these are the hours that are being associated with these other ones. We've got 33 hours associated with Webinar 5 project, the one we just created. So this gives me, the idea of like, okay, where's this time being spent? So this is really a good place to start to understand, what are the people working on? And, here's their availability, here's the capacity, and then we'll look at it from a project perspective. And then if we want to look at it from a work by resource perspective, this can tell me right here that, these are the hours that this person's assigned. We know in this case 168 is the magic number. So, and you can see that down here. For example, in the month of June, we know it's 168 hours. So, this tells me that, this person's wildly overallocated and this is underallocated. So, I mean, this can give you all kinds of insights into, what's going on from a resource management perspective. And then there's the whole heat map side of this, which can show you capacity engagement heat maps, discrepancies between the committed and the others. So I mean, the whole resource capability thing is pretty important. So I mean, if I'm the resource manager looking at a particular group of resources and making that determination, this can give you all kinds of insights in terms of who's working on what. It can give you the information you need to transfer work from what I would call generic resources to non-generic ones to specific people. What I see a lot is the whole idea of a capability manager who would be responsible for, making those determinations, or you could have a more formal organization with resource managers, by line of business or something like that. But it really can allow you to focus it, make those calculations and determinations. Any questions, Lori?
We do have a question, not specific to this, but specific to PMO. Do you want to hear that now?
Sure, why not?
Okay. When you get a chance, reiterate the differences between a PMO and a TMO, the roles and responsibilities and skills, and how they play together and how they are different.
All right, let's talk about that. Okay, the TMO and a PMO are usually two different, and what I've used them when we did this for strategy consulting work, but a PMO is more focused on project management discipline that's within an organization, and it would include more core skills that would be required for management of projects. Because this would be more operational in that nature, development of development of ongoing operations that would be more focused on a particular building the PMO and PPM capability within an organization. It would include things like financial management, resource management, understanding from an HR perspective, vendor management, supply chain management, all those types of things, the whole scalable and delivery models. So these would be an ongoing group of capabilities that would live on as an organization runs. A TMO is really focused on transformation, is really focused on it's a short-term office that's focused on running one specific complex problem. In a transformation office, we would run those if we were actually doing, usually an organizational redesign, or if we're doing an IT strategy design that would involve, major transformation on an organization that would span, many groups of control. I mean, for example, one of the key things within transformation is the whole idea of change management. So, I mean, there's both, a lot of times what this can involve is like a change to the delivery model, a change to the resource models, a new line of business, where there's a significant amount of organizational change associated with it. So what you would have is a team that would be, a project management team, a change management team that would be focused on delivering the transformation program, working with the organization to actually go ahead and implement it. Financial management, basically assuring that the business case associated with a transformation activity is actually being realized and measured. But in terms of what it would do is the TMO would borrow capabilities from the enterprise PMO, and then, upon completion of a transformation program, this would go away, and then the PMO would reside and continue onward. But usually it's a best practice if you're trying to do a major strategic project to spin off a separate TMO where you've got somebody responsible for that transformation program, and then they would borrow skills and capabilities from the overall enterprise PMO, which is ongoing. And that's why it's so important from a PMO perspective. It's got to be a living, breathing thing, focused and very much aligned with the CIO and even above that, to ensure that you're focused on, aligned with the strategy of the overall organization. Hopefully that answered the question.
I think that answered the question. Thanks.
Okay, so we talk about resource utilization. I mean, it was 2 more points here. In terms of, ability to look at the resource pool, from Microsoft perspective, Power BI, can't beat it, right? It's in terms of its, Power BI's ability to, gain insights into pretty much anywhere in the Office 365 stack. It's really, unparalleled in terms of its ability to look at not just resources, but your projects. You can look at, integration with Dynamics, integration with financial management. One of the things we use is, from our perspective, from a Quantum PM, is we integrate frequently, PMO tools with like ERP packages, with ITSM packages, with Agile packages. I mean, we've done them for with DevOps for like if we wanted to do something like Jenkins or one of the other ones. So in terms of building an enterprise project management capability, you can do that with our BI Advantage tool, and then sitting Power BI to provide enterprise reporting on top of it. It's a very powerful tool. In terms of what project can offer you in terms of reporting, what they have is these are called there's content packs which support Power BI reports. There's two major aspects of it. You've got dashboards and reports, where a dashboard is in effect a mashup of multiple reports. So that you can actually build reports that come from a single source of truth and flow into an overall dashboard, and then you can look at it from that. The thing about the content packs is that they're not hard to build. We build them all the time for customers. The other thing you'll find is that a lot of the content packs, many vendors and external third-party applications are developing their own content packs. So if you've got Power BI and you want it to be a user, for example, of, let's see here, ServiceNow, if you want to look at their incidents, ServiceNow has a content pack that they use, and Jira does, and some of the other apps, as they come along, they develop their own content packs. For purposes of resource management, The other thing you could look at is in terms of the way of delivering this. Microsoft is big into Teams right now. They're pushing this whole idea of Microsoft Teams. They're doing team meetings, but the whole concept of teams and reports are very much embedded. So you can have reports that are aligned with the teams that you might have across your organization. But then what you could do is you develop the reports and you can say, okay, let's look at the Microsoft Project Online. This is a standard content pack that Microsoft gives you. If you buy Project Online, you just download the content pack. It's something that Microsoft will, here, I'll show you. Just give it away here. Oops. Let's see here. Maybe it's not there. Where is it here? Should I go buy it? Yeah. Beginning of it. Oh, here it is, right in the front. Yeah, so there's a content pack that Microsoft provides out of the box if you get Project Online and have Power BI. So if you look at Microsoft Project Online, this is the report that's available from Microsoft. If you look at the bottom, these are different tabs that are associated with different views. So you can do portfolio dashboards. From a best practices perspective, when I like to implement these, start at the top, work your way down. We'll talk about reporting in the next episode of this series, but it's going to be best practice around report design. Make sure the messaging is consistent. Don't put too much data in there that's confusing about what you're trying to convey. Make it easy to understand where there are pain points and then deep dive into the specifics of it. But for purposes of resource management, you can use the Power BI capabilities to pretty much get any view you want of your resources. So the views that we looked at within Project Online, you can do the same stuff in Power BI. And the thing that's also really great about Power BI is I can do other views that I have. And one of the challenges I see a lot with companies is that they ask, well, should I build views in Project Online or should I use Power BI? A lot of times I tell them just use Power BI. Just because as long as the data is available, you can actually go ahead and pull it from there. So I mean, this is one of the capabilities that companies really should take advantage of as much as they can. Again, I can't stress enough. I'm using Power BI as the enterprise reporting tool for pretty much everything. That's just a great best practice overall. Plus, you can go over here, drop it down into PowerPoint. One of the challenges you see with reporting all the time is people spending all this time making reports and rather than actually, being managers and being portfolio managers, they're actually going ahead and, building out, building reports rather than just taking advantage of this, which would do it for you and allow you to use your time more effectively. So, I mean, so using the reporting capabilities here, I mean, there's other ones you can do. We've built some custom ones from a quantum PM perspective. Let's see here, project overview dashboard. Let me see here. Data dashboard. Yeah, so we've got some ones that we've developed as well. Where's one of those we've got? Yeah, so you can build these as easily as you want. So I think that's pretty important. One last thing here I want to talk about is we talked earlier about the fact that the resource utilization capability within Project Online. You have a real opportunity here from an organizational perspective to understand where you've got problems with your resource pool, not just from a resource management perspective. We did a session a few weeks ago on the whole portfolio analysis piece. If you look at the portfolio management capabilities within Project Online, and we'll just do this quickly here because we're running out of time. But if I go into portfolio management, and here's my cost model that I've built, you need to make sure you've got a pretty much a consistent portfolio management model in place. Just click this along from a portfolio analysis perspective. Yeah, if you want to do analyze resources piece, and this is one that I keep telling people this one over and over again because it's a pretty important point. If you go to analyze resource, which allows you to determine, based on your resource pool, still thinking. It tells you what's selected and what's not selected. You've got this view here where you can look at, requirements details, and it can tell you for things that were not selected for inclusion in the process, because the way the portfolio works is you've got, the cost tower, and then you've got the resource tower. But this can tell you, for projects that were not included in the portfolio, it tells you not just, why they weren't selected, but from a resource management perspective, it'll tell you, not just why things weren't included, but what the resource problem was that caused it to be kicked. And this is pretty important because, this is one where the portfolio manager can give some pretty significant insights to the resource manager and HR and say, look, I got a bunch of projects I can't do because I'm short on testers. I'm short on trainers. So this can really give you an opportunity to improve your overall resource pool and resource model in a way that allows you to bring more stuff on ability to perform more projects overall. Okay, that's all I had. Any other questions, Lori? Or
Yeah, there is one question, John. One of our existing BIA customers wants to know how they get the QPM dashboards and content packs.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head, but I can research that one.
Okay. We will get back to you then.
Do you know who it is, Lori?
I do. I have the name. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, that's it for resource management. Please join us next month for this is going to be the last one of this series. I think we're going to, then we're going to go from, we're going to talk about reporting and dashboards around the entire ecosystem, best practices for report design. Power BI, we'll talk a lot about Power BI. And then we're going to, we've got the new webinars that we're going to be doing around financial services and HR. I think we're thinking about another webinar series on disruption and digital disruption in general. If anybody has any thoughts on, webinars they'd like to see, send me or Lori a note. We'd be happy to, respond to it. And, definitely want to, things that are of interest to people. These are definitely things we're interested in. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you all next month. Bye-bye.